ever get that, like, just the spinning wheel of doom when your internet's just not working?
Oh, yeah.
And you're just like, ugh, come on.
Mm.
Now imagine that, but, like, amplified, you know, to whole communities, entire regions, where it's not just a temporary annoyance. It's like reliable access just doesn't exist.
Right.
That's the kind of problem that makes the idea of satellite internet. So
Interesting. You know that, like, aha moment when you realize connectivity could come from above. And that brings us to what we're looking at today, Elon Musk's Starlink and its whole story in India. Yeah, we've got a really fascinating snapshot in front of us. This article from March 17th, 2025, not just about the latest stuff going on with Starlink in India, but the bigger picture, like the tech, the market, and how it all fits in with the regulatory side of things.
Yeah.
Always fun.
So basically, if you're tuning in, today's deep dive is all about getting you up to speed on this. We're going to break down what Starlink is, the potential impact in India, the hurdles it faces, and what it all means for how people get online, especially in those areas that are really underserved. Okay, so let's start with the basics. What is Starlink in a nutshell?
Okay, so Starlink provides internet service using a huge network of satellites. But the key here is that they're not. Those geostationary satellites, you know, the ones way out there in space.
Right.
Starlink uses a low Earth orbit constellation, that's LEO. It's like a fleet. Over 7,000 satellites orbiting close to Earth.
Oh.
Yeah, it's spearheaded by, of course, Elon Musk's SpaceX. It's actually already providing service in around 40 countries.
7,000 satellites. That's a lot of satellites.
Right.
But how does this whole cosmic network actually turn into Wi-Fi for someone, you know, at their house or their business?
It's a pretty direct line of communication, actually. So the user, they need a special terminal on the ground. It kind of looks like a satellite dish.
Okay.
And this terminal connects to the Starlink satellites that are passing overhead.
Yeah.
Then the satellites relay the data down to these ground stations that are placed strategically around the globe.
Okay.
And those ground stations connected to the regular internet backbone. So it's like this chain, you know, from your terminal to a satellite, another hop to a ground station, and then boom, you're on the wider internet.
I see.
And this setup it's really good for reaching areas where putting down fiber optic cables or building a bunch of cell towers just isn't possible, or it would be way too expensive.
So it's like where traditional internet infrastructure just can't quite reach.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm getting it. Now what's the big news? What's the headline about Starlink in India from this article?
All right, so this is where it gets really interesting and maybe a bit surprising. The article says that two of India's huge telecom companies, Bharti Airtel and Reliance Jio, are actually partnering with SpaceX to bring Starlink to India.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Oh.
it's a big shift because the article mentions that these same companies, they were concerned about Starlink launching without going through spectrum auctions.
Right. That's the usual process for like allocating frequencies to the mobile company.
Exactly. So this partnership kind of suggests they're changing their strategies a bit. Maybe they're seeing that Starlink is more of a complementary thing, not just direct competition for certain parts of the Indian market.
So maybe it's less about like either and more about like different tools for different situations.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
Makes you think what prompted that change, though. But okay, let's talk user experience. So if someone's in India and they're using Starlink, what kind of like speeds and responsiveness can they expect?
Okay, so the article mentions that users can expect speeds around 100 Mbps, which is comparable to what you see with typical home broadband connections in well-connected cities. Now, for latency, that's the delay in data transmission.
Right.
Starlink's LEO technology does offer lower latency than old-school satellite internet, but it's still higher than what you'd get with a really good wired connection.
Okay.
So that means it's great for most stuff online, you know, browsing, streaming, video calls.
Definitely okay.
It might not be the best for anything super sensitive to delays.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, pro-level gaming or certain financial trading platforms.
Right, where every millisecond counts.
Exactly.
So if you're already in a big Indian city with strong 5G or fiber optic, does Starlink even make sense?
Probably not as like your main internet. The existing setup there is likely to be faster and with lower latency. Starlink's real strength in India is reaching those rural, remote areas. We're setting up all that infrastructure. It's just a massive undertaking.
Yeah.
You know, logistically and financially.
Right. It's just not practical.
Yeah. Think about communities up in the Himalayas or islands or sparsely populated farmlands for those areas. Starlink could be really transformative, giving them a level of access they just didn't have before.
So it's about reaching those parts that have been left behind, closing that digital divide.
That's
beyond just individuals in these remote places, what are some other ways that Starlink could benefit India, like on a larger scale?
Okay, so the article talks about some pretty cool use cases, like in the maritime world.
Yeah.
You know, fishing fleets, cargo ships, even oil rigs, they can get internet out at sea. Makes things more efficient, safer, better for the crews.
Yeah.
And it talks about solo sailors, not just for entertainment, but in emergencies, being able to send for help from the middle of the ocean.
Yeah.
That's huge.
It's like a safety net.
Yeah.
And what about when disaster strikes? India is prone to natural calamities. How could Starlink help there?
This is a major advantage. You know, cyclones, floods, earthquakes, when they hit, the communication infrastructure, cell towers, fiber lines, they're often the first things to go.
It all goes down.
Yeah, and Starlink, being satellite-based, offers a backup. It lets you quickly set up communication hubs for first responders, military, aid groups. The article even mentions hikers in remote areas could have these portable Starlink kits, send SOS signals. If mobile networks are down, it could be life-saving.
Right, like a lifeline in those critical moments. Okay, so it sounds really beneficial, but what's the financial side of this? For the user, how much does it actually cost to get Starlink up and running in India?
So there are two parts to this. First, you've got the user terminal. That's the dish and the equipment you need to connect. One-time hardware purchase.
Okay.
Then there's the monthly subscription for the service itself. The article suggests that. We shouldn't expect Starlink to be much cheaper in India compared to other places, at least not at first. But the core technology, the satellites, those costs are global.
So probably not a budget option right away.
Probably not. The final price in India will depend on, regulatory approvals and Starlink's own decisions about adapting to that market. Now, just to get an idea, the article mentions pricing in Bhutan. The hardware there is about 17,000 to 40,000 rupees. Monthly subscriptions are 4,200 to 8,400.
So a decent chunk of change.
Yeah, but keep in mind, those are just figures from a different market. It gives you a sense, though, of the potential range.
Right, just to give us a ballpark.
Exactly.
Okay, now, you've mentioned regulatory approvals a few times. The Indian government, they oversee internet services. So it sounds like a pretty complicated situation for Starlink.
Oh, yeah, for sure. The Indian government, they're known for being pretty strict when it comes to nationwide internet. And the article, it outlines the major approvals that Starlink needs to get before they can really launch. The first one, the most important one, is the GMPCS authorization. That stands for Global Mobile Personal Communications by Satellite License. I know, right? It's mandated under the Telecommunications Act of 2023. But here's the thing. The specific rules for that act, they're still being finalized.
Oh, so it's like they're moving target.
Yeah, and it makes it uncertain for Starlink because it's not clear if they'll be judged under the old rules or the new ones.
I see. So that ambiguity can really hold things up.
Absolutely.
What else does Starlink need to do on this regulatory front?
Okay, so they also need security clearance. From the Ministry of Home Affairs, the article mentions that. Some earlier concerns about disclosing corporate ownership, those seem to be resolved. But we don't know for sure if they have the security clearance yet.
Right.
Then Starlink needs to set up ground stations in India to link the satellites to the ground internet.
Right.
And these stations have to follow local telecom rules, which means having equipment for law enforcement to access communications if it's legally required.
Right. That's standard procedure for any internet provider.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, the article also mentioned this spectrum allocation dispute. What was that all about?
This was a big point of contention before. The Airtel and Jio partnerships. The Indian government, their stance is they don't want to auction the spectrum for satellite internet. Their reasoning is that the signals, the beams from these satellites, they're so focused they can be shared without causing interference.
So no need for an auction.
Right. But the telecom companies, especially Reliance Jio, they argued pretty hard that the spectrum should be auctioned, bringing up the 2012 Supreme Court ruling on the 2G spectrum, which said that scarce resources should be auctioned. Jio even got legal opinions to back them up. Now, even with these new partnerships, the government hasn't made a final call on the spectrum policy for satellite internet. So this issue, it could still come back around.
Okay, so it's like it's settled for now, but it could still be a problem down the line.
Exactly.
Now, there was also this mention of potentially fast-tracking approvals. What could make the process faster for Starlink?
The article points to a couple of things. One is Elon Musk and his companies seem to have more and more influence with the U.S. government. And the other is the whole trade relationship and pressure from the U.S., something that was happening even back during the Trump administration.
Right.
So the idea is that these international politics, these economic pressures, could push the Indian government to speed things up for Starlink.
Interesting how that all ties in. So to sum it up, what's the current situation for Starlink in India as of this article?
As of March 17th, 2025, the article says that none of the big regulatory approvals have been officially confirmed by the Indian government. Now, the deals with Airtel and Jio, those are big steps forward.
Right.
But until those hurdles are cleared, they can't really launch the service widely. So they've got the partners. They're just waiting for the green light.
We're ready to go, but they're stuck in bureaucracy limbo.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so just to recap for our listeners, Starlink is a really interesting tech solution with real potential to connect those underserved areas in India. And we're seeing some kind of unexpected, but potentially really important partnerships with big telecom companies. But widespread adoption depends on getting through a pretty complex regulatory system.
Absolutely. And if you're involved in rural connectivity, maritime industries, or things like disaster response, the Starlink situation in India is definitely something to watch.
For sure. It really makes you think. With everything happening here, satellite tech, traditional networks, what will internet access look like in the future in a country as diverse as India? And what kind of cool innovations might we see as these different approaches start to blend together, reaching those places that have never been connected before?
Yeah.
It's exciting to think about.
It is.
It's a whole new landscape.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.